Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Sanjeev,
Yeah, good evening, Salil. Hi.
and welcome to all. We are, this is Images, as you all know, is a society of the alumni of IIMS, and we have started this series of e-roundtable, where we bring you interesting conversations and interesting information from the business world. We are today hosting the ninth session of the e-roundtable. And the topic today is Conversation with a CEO, Managing Rapid Growth. We have with us Sanjeev Agarwal. Sanjeev is the founder and CEO of Amplus Solar. He's a mechanical engineer and he's an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. He's from the 1995 batch. He started Amplus in 2013 to address the gaps in the energy service offerings. From the first rooftop project in 2014, they have now over 300 projects across India with 800 megawatt of distributed solar assets. Uh, this is amazing growth. Last year, the company was acquired by Petronas of Malaysia for 2,700 crores. Uh, I have had the opportunity to work with Sanjeev and in a consulting role, and extremely impressed, by the way he works, and very impressed by his growth, and this is why he's here with us today. Sanjeev, you ready?
Sorry, there was a call. Yeah.
That's okay. So Sanjeev, thanks for being with us, and once again, welcome. I'm sure we'll have lots to learn from you, and some of our younger participants will have even more to learn from you. Let me start by asking you, how did this growth happen, right? And what were some of the enablers of this rapid growth? So, achieving a growth from zero to 2,700 crores in 5 years is no small feat. And what are your views? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I think the issues that are relevant in any sector or any company when we are growing is uh, one, you have to be in the right industry, and I would say that every industry is right. There is no industry which is not right. So when I say right industry, you have to find out what is the right business model in an industry. So when you again say what is the right business model, I think the probably the answer is that are we addressing a need which is inherent and which is something uh, which can meet some latent or some coming requirements of people, probably which were not realized or which can be met in a more efficient manner. So I think this is like the basic thing when you're looking at
Correct.
an industry. So therefore you look at an industry from that perspective, that what is the new thing that I am bringing on the table rather
Correct.
than bringing something which is already on the table.
Correct.
So therefore you're not bringing any new service or new product to the customers, and it doesn't make much sense. So one is that basic requirement, that whichever industry people want to work in, whichever industry people want to choose, so it has to be something which is a
So,
requirement of the people
right. So
rather
you
than.
believe that your service offering was right and at the right time.
Correct. So
Correct. Okay.
correct. So therefore, I would say that. So, for example, it's not like we started with solar. So I've been
Right.
working in the energy industry for like 25 years,
Correct.
and when I started M Plus, it was in 2010, not 2013.
Okay.
2013 was the time when we actually moved into solar space.
Correct.
Before that, I looked at coal, gas, wind, everything. So
Right.
therefore, what happens is that you keep on identifying what are the requirements. Obviously, energy is a basic requirement. Now, what is going to be the product in the energy space? That's the question. So whether coal makes sense, whether gas makes sense, whether wind makes sense, or with the change in the technology, solar was making more sense. I think that's what people call pivoting. So
Right.
you basically keep on reinventing your product or reinventing your services to find out what is actually eventually going to work for your consumers at the
Right.
end of the day. So that's like the industry part of it. And then obviously, once you are in the right industry and you have the right mindset to serve the customers, then comes the question about the scalability.
Hmm.
And when you're scaling up, depending on which industry you are, so factors which are important are basically, I think the most important factor is people,
Right.
that you must have the right team when you're starting up, when you're scaling up. And I think depending on how rapidly you are growing, putting in some of the systems and processes also becomes extremely important. And
Great.
the third factor in an industry like ours, which is energy industry, can be the capital intensity. So you obviously need capital, which is much larger than just to run the day-to-day operations.
Correct.
So you can have a startup which doesn't require so much of capital because largely services based, and you can work with a smaller team, and you can work with a low budget.
Right.
But in an industry like energy, you need like hundreds of millions of dollars. So therefore, it becomes a very capital intensive. So you need to have the right combination of all these two or three things depending on which industry people are in, and then take it forward.
Okay. So Sanjeev, let me first address the people issue, right? And like you rightly said, keep having the right team is extremely important. And before I come to my next question, let me mention to everyone, feel free to put in your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box. We will look at them and maybe take them along as the conversation goes. So if you have something popping up in your mind, just feel free to put it down here. So coming to the people issue, you know, I have personally found you to be one of the most down to earth CEOs that I've met. Does that help you in managing people better? How does that work for you?
So I find no reason why a CEO should not be like a normal person. CEO is just a role. At the end of the day, we are all human beings. So we are humans first, and then any role that we fulfill in any format. So that is like how you talk to people. So if you call it humbleness, humility, whatever you may call it, but I don't see any reason why we should not be respecting first people as human beings. That's the first part. Then comes the question about when you're dealing with people in the organization, then what are you looking for? Are these people really doing their job properly? So that is one challenge that comes, like, okay, somebody is not working properly, and then you lose cool, and then you say, I'm going to shout at him. That's where people think that somebody is not humble. And I'm sure there would have been instances within my organization also where people didn't feel that I'm being humble. So one is like you have to be humble as a person, but when you're playing your role, you need to play it, and you need to fulfill that role according to the requirement of that role. So whatever we need to do in the company or organization, that's where you have to play a different role, and you have to ask the right set of questions. And when you're asking those questions to get the right answers in the context of the company's growth, there you need to ask in the right format. That's where whether you get irritated easily,
Yeah.
whether you get whether you can have a lot of patience, whether you think it's a question of person not understanding it, whether you think the person is inherently idiot, so therefore you just lose cool. So I think I would have gone through all the circumstances with different people. So I won't say I'm that humble probably as a professional CEO, as maybe as a person I'm more humble.
So, Sanjeev, probably a very personal question, but where does this humility come from? Is that something which is part of your upbringing, or is this something that you sort of learned as you worked along? Because a lot of these young MBAs that I meet, the moment they pass out of these wonderful gates of IIMs, they become arrogant. Sorry, I've met many
No,
of those,
I
and
think
I've
no, I
told them.
think that there's nothing to feel arrogant about what your technical or qualifications, etc., are, because as I mentioned, that you need to remain humble as a person first, because that's the basic thing. If you cannot even talk to people well, then there's no use of that education. That's absolutely goes without saying. So if anybody thinks that I have been educated, so that's for you, not for other people. So you are not doing like आप किसी के ऊपर कोई एहसान थोड़ी कर रहे हो अगर आपने पढ़ाई करी है दैट डजंट मीन दैट यू आर डूइंग एनीथिंग वेल फॉर देम
Correct.
you have to do well for them and you have to do well for the society. That will be your contribution to the society. Then you can say yeah, this is what I have done. So that is the first part. So if you are good technically, you have to show it in your workspace, not with people. So you do something which is value accretive rather than saying no, I can shout at people. Just that doesn't help, because people will get more and more antagonized by that, and they won't cooperate with you. At the end of the day, we all work as a society, and therefore we have to work as with a lot of people with us. And if people don't respect you as a person, then probably they won't respect you as a professional also.
True. So, like I said earlier, I've had the opportunity of seeing Sanjeev at work, and I've seen him sit in an open office, create an extremely open environment. He's extremely approachable. In fact, most of the time he's not at his desk. He's meeting people and talking to people, in the spaces around. He's actually created spaces where people can have informal conversations. I was very impressed by his overall approach of caring for the people in the organization. Uh, Sanjeev, your comments about this, was this by design? Was this by, did
Yeah,
this
so I
just
think
happen over a period of time? What are your thoughts?
the important point there was like when we were just like initially we were like 4 or 5 people,
Right,
and then we became 30 people,
right,
and then we were like 100, and the next time I knew we were like 300. So therefore the always the challenge was that how do you remain connected with the people when you are growing so fast. So the one of the challenges is that if you create uh, different silos, different departments. One is in the organization diagram, one is in the physical design of the office. So all the things convey a message to people at the end of the day. So whoever is coming to your company or who is working in the organization, they all carry a message. And if you are sitting behind the thick walls, that sends a message. We all know what body language. If I start sitting like this,
yeah,
then oh, this guy is closed, right? That's how people perceive it.
correct,
And if you are sitting like as an open person, then people feel much more comfortable talking. So that's like the simple human psychology, that how do you encourage people to open up.
mm,
First you have to open up yourself. So you don't want to hide behind the glass walls. That's the first thing. You don't want to hide behind the walls. You don't want to hide behind the secretaries, right? So you'll find a lot of time uh, to meet any senior management or a CEO of a company. You have to go through like at least 1 or 2 levels
yeah,
to
gatekeepers.
gatekeepers to even get an appointment. Oh, is the boss free? Is he going to meet? Can I go and meet and all that stuff? Though he's doing nothing,
Yeah,
but at least somebody will make him feel important, that oh, I'm actually keeping your time.
yeah,
So 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 I think that was the first thing which is to be avoided. So I don't have any assistant, I don't have any personal assistant, I don't have any secretary and all that. So there's a common secretary. You all know Nikhil, he works for everyone in the company. So we keep all that very very simple
right,
in terms of providing that type of environment to people, that they should feel unthreatened
right.
to raise any point and to bring up any issue, and we can discuss that, so that people can come for advice, people can come for giving any suggestion, people can come for any work without getting worried about that uh, what will I be doing or what will I be thinking about it. So that remains completely open. So it's by design. So to answer your question about whether this is by design, this is absolutely by design. It has to be an open office. It has to convey that message that we are transparent, we are open, and therefore anybody can go and talk to everyone. This also creates a little bit of a, the within the people also. So people are encouraged to get up there from their seat and go and talk to other people.
Correct, correct.
So
Very
we
true.
don't encourage like sending mails to each other
Yeah,
just across the aisle because they want to record it, that I have done this thing and
yeah,
he has not done this thing. So that has to be completely discouraged. Get up from your seat and go and talk and resolve it. So that's the idea. So if somebody is sitting just across to you in the next row, it will look very stupid that you are sending a mail. So that is something which is to be completely avoided. So that's another reason for creating an open office, that people should be resolving the issues almost in real time rather than trying to hide behind the emails or the phone calls. We don't provide any like the phone instruments on the tables nowadays. Probably a lot of
now
people
you
don't.
don't need it. So Sanjeev, this reminds me of, I was consulting for a CEO. This is about 25 years ago, when all these CEOs used to have a toilet attached to their room.
Hmm.
And I just accidentally happened to be there when his architect came for the office design. And I said, the first thing you should do is don't build a toilet inside your room. At least it'll force you to get out and see the people, what they are doing 4 times, 5 times a day.
It's not good from
and
Vastu
and it
perspective.
actually made made a lot of difference in his organization, which he told me after 2 years. He said, Salil, that was one of the best tips that you gave me.
Yeah.
Anyway, coming back to so you talked about office design and how that affects culture. Let me also talk about caring for people. So you offer a free lunch on weekends, and that lunch is like carefully designed, different themes. One day it's a South Indian meal, one day it's a Gujarati meal, etc., etc. These are all simple things which go to say how the organization is caring for its people. So any comments on that, please?
I think basically what we want to do is to make life simple for people. So this like lunch is like a very small element of that. But like for example, I will given you even a little bigger example. Like a lot of our workforce is very young, and a lot of these people come from outside the city, coming for the first time into Gurgaon or moving within from other places to Gurgaon. And Gurgaon is a costly city, as you
Right.
know. It's not like if a single person is coming here, accommodation itself can be very challenging.
Yeah.
To set up the entire house and to set up everything can be fairly challenging for people. So what we have done is, like, if you remember in the old good days, there used to be Chamri accommodation.
Hmm.
So we have provided people like the company accommodation where there are shared apartments. So
Yes.
people
Yes.
can share the rooms, and
Yes.
they can have a good accommodation which is fully furnished, which is taken care by the company, and the people can just walk across the road to the office. That makes life extremely simple for people. So the idea is that anything which we can do, which makes people life simple, is they can get rid of these small issues. So we don't, for example, stop people if somebody has any work. You just, so as you know, we don't have any leave policy, we don't have any time in time out policy. So now work from home is now common, but we have been like simply not keeping any attendance record ever,
Right. Right.
right? So no attendance record ever.
Yeah.
What you do is, like, you just ask people, you work what you think is right for you, and therefore you decide where you want to work, when you want to work. If you want to work at your home, please work from your home. You don't need to come to office.
And I think the upside of that is you have a very, very lean HR team as well.
Yeah, so we have like 1.5% manager. Yeah, exactly.
I
So
know. I know. In fact, the other thing that, this conversation has just triggered, and I thought of asking this question to you later, is, not only do you manage your own work-life balance, you help manage it for your employees as well. So, let me ask this question, which probably would have come at the end now. So, how do you manage your work-life balance? I've always found you managing it more effectively than many other people that I've seen.
so I somehow I remain. I think most of my time is like I don't have much to do.
I like that. I like the candid, I always say this, and you said it once earlier also, the CEO will get a secretary to manage the visitor, even though the person is doing nothing.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think anybody can be really, really busy for like 15, 16 hours in a day, as people claim to be.
Hmm.
Because if you're doing that, that means you're not giving enough scope to rest of your company people
Hmm.
to do their work. That means you're not delegating enough. You're not giving enough decision making power. That means you want everybody to come back to you for taking the decisions. And if you create that type of situation, then you'll remain busy forever.
Correct.
So if I create a situation that I ask everyone, no, no, don't do it unless you ask me. Everybody will come to me. It's very
Correct.
simple, very straightforward,
Hmm.
because the message percolates down.
Yeah.
So you will just keep on waiting for the
Yeah.
direction. And if you have to give direction to 300 people, you will remain busy like 30 hours in a day. So that's not going to happen. So therefore, you have to just provide enough leeway for people to take the decisions. And then you have to trust them that they will take the right decision.
Correct. And sometimes maybe even back them if they take a wrong decision.
Of course.
Yeah. So, this is very, very interesting. It reminds me of a story which I'm going to skip right now. But let me just make one comment for the attention of a couple of people. So there's a anonymous attendee who has asked a question, Ankit Bansal, and also Ravi Chandran. All these questions are technical questions, right? So I'm going to keep the last 5 minutes for the technical question, because this conversation I was trying to get more about
Yeah,
how.
I presume there are people from from the solar sector who are interested in
Probably.
the solar
So
sector.
we'll come
They are,
back to those questions at the end. I sort of flagged them that we will answer those questions, but at the end. But before that, I wanted to talk to you about processes, right? So you also talked about processes, right? And I must share this here that, Sanjeev is one of those people, very few people. Normally, I've been a management consultant for a very large part of my life. And invariably, I have to go to the client and convince them that, look, please improve your processes. And here is a CEO who calls me up and says, Salil, can you come and, design a process for something new that we are doing? So, Sandeep, where did this focus on processes come from? And I know it works. I'm convinced. But maybe you can say something about why it works and how you sort of made sure it works.
see, any if you're doing any work which requires scalability,
Yeah,
so you need to put the systems and processes in place, because otherwise you're leaving it to the whims and fancies or judgment of people. I'm not saying that the judgment of people will be bad. Maybe the initial judgment of people will be good, but as you scale up, you will have hundreds of people doing the same job, and you don't want those people to make mistakes, right? I often give an example of McDonald's in the company. I think if you go to any McDonald's store anywhere in a country, you will find the same taste, same quality, same everything,
correct,
and that is what we have to do.
correct,
If you want to serve people at a scale, you must have a product which can be replicated by a reasonably trained person, not the best of the people, but a reasonably trained person, so that reasonably trained person, once he is told that you have to take this thing, and then he can create a product.
correct.
Therefore, any scalability requires system and process. I don't think it requires any more emphasis than that, because if you don't do that, then you're leaving it to the judgment of people. Then you're leaving it to a lot of maybe like the supply chain issues, which may not get resolved if you're not really sorted out the processes.
Correct.
Those are the types of things. So I think it's
So,
simple.
Sandeep, this is not something that is really taught at management schools or not taught at IIM. So, where did you pick this up and where did you become so passionate about processes?
See, when you are doing, when it's like, in my mind is whether it's IIM or any other education, what you do is it basically prepares you for future, and particularly the MBA education prepares you more for the analytical and logical reasoning.
Hmm.
So you should not expect any ready-made solution from there. So when you are finally onto the ground, you have to use your judgment skills along with the people skill and say this is the probably the best solution for this situation, because there will never be perfect solution. I think that is the
Correct.
one thing which is taught at least at
Correct.
Ahmedabad, that there is no one solution, and which is a good thing, because you always uh, you always can take a decision to the best of your judgment, and you have to believe in that. And it all depends on how many times you take a good decision versus how many times you take a bad decision. So if you are probably 80% times you're taking a good decision, then you'll be successful. If you take bad decisions, say 40% of times, then probably you will be average. And if you take 50% time bad decision, then you're bad. So you can't be like saying, hey, half the time I'm good.
So, was any of your earlier jobs an influence on some of these things? So, for example, my first job, I worked for an American multinational, and the culture of that organization, actually influenced me significantly in terms of some of my working style. Is there something like that that made a difference, or is it something that you've learned along the way when after you set up Amplus, or you learned from other people?
No, no, you always learn. So anybody you meet every day, you learn. So, but I think your initial jobs have a significant influence on how you are shaped up as a professional.
Right.
That that I still believe. So my first job was with SBI Capital Markets,
Okay.
and I think it was blessing in disguise that I didn't end up with a foreign bank. While the foreign banks, one can look at like good salary and good name, etc., etc. But in a company like SBI Caps, what I found was there was no politics.
Okay.
So nobody was trying to drag you down. That was a good thing. So because everybody is working in a very friendly environment, so you start to work in a system where you're not afraid that somebody is going to pull you down. If you leave that fear away, and if you start thinking that everybody is nice,
Hmm.
and that's where lot of trust with with yourself and amongst people come, that you can trust people and people will trust you, so it becomes like a two-way street always, and that really helps.
Very good.
Okay, so my second job, my boss was a very tough guy. If and I have to reach like 9 o'clock.
Hmm.
If I don't reach 9 o'clock, 9:05,
Hmm.
his secretary will call, why are you late and where have you reached?
Hmm.
Okay, so what will happen is, like it's an office of five people,
Hmm.
and there is secretary for the boss, specifically for the boss, and there is another secretary
Yeah.
visiting at the reception. So when I look at those days, how bad I felt
Hmm.
and how stupid that all seemed to me, I said, why at all we should have a time limit for people?
Yeah.
People are sensible enough. People should be taking their decisions. If you can't trust those decisions with managing their own time, how can you trust them for taking hundreds of millions of
Absolutely.
dollars of business decisions?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's like the, I think that's like the, so when you say that whoever you meet, you learn something from them. And
I had a
whether you learn it for good or bad, that's up to you. So whether
So
you
I
want
had
to,
a German boss, Sanjeev, in Saudi Arabia, and he used to stand with a literally a big clock, for pocket clock,
yeah,
and he would come to the office on time once randomly in 5 days, and he would stand there and tell me you're 20 seconds late. And this was when we were doing a journey of about 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers, and exactly the same feeling. And I said, what rubbish is this? Give people flexibility. And the reaction was that I stopped sitting late. I said, listen, you want to watch me for coming on time in
exactly,
the morning? I'll stop sitting late. I'll leave on time, whether work happens or it does not happen.
correct. So therefore, people
Very,
have
very,
to,
very valuable. But you sort of stumbled or brought me into a very interesting another question, which I thought I will not ask you. But you said it was very good that you joined SBI Capital Market because there was no politics there. How do you keep politics out of your organization?
correct. So politics will creep in once you start talking with people in silos.
Hmm.
If you start talking to people on one-to-one basis,
Hmm.
somebody will give you one information, another will give you another information. Everybody wants to be true to the king.
Hmm.
Right? So he wants to be loyal to the king.
Right.
So you have to avoid that kingdom. You have to
Yeah.
break the kingdom and say, "Okay, let's all sit on the same table.
Hmm.
Let's talk about it. What is the
Hmm.
issue?"
Hmm.
And that's where the politics goes away. So the
Excellent.
information transparency, the availability of information with different people
Right.
has to be almost the same level.
Correct.
Because as soon as people have more information than someone else, that's where they start creeping in.
Very nice. So I think some wonderful inputs. Let me ask you one last question on this subject, and then we'll try and switch to these few technical questions. Uh, what tips for budding professionals, young managers, aspiring to become CEOs, aspiring to become founders, and aspiring to create wealth?
I can't answer the last one because you have to basically, okay. So maybe if you are doing something which you enjoy every day, I think you will end up making money because you have a basic education, which helps you. Because you will not be like you will be not falling off the road. It's
Hmm.
like you have always have a backup available. You have a good education, and if you look forward to going to office every day, I think you will succeed. So if you think that I am not enjoying going to office, leave that job.
Okay.
Look for something else. I'm not saying ki, like you go on the street and just give the resignation. Don't do stupidity,
Hmm.
but look for something which where you can enjoy it. So I think that's the basic advice in the early stages, that you do something where you can enjoy your time,
Correct.
and something that you really like working on. Everything else slowly falls into place. Work with people, trust people, and build a network. Have a reputation with people, which people ask you after 25 years also, somebody, that how was he like 25 years back?
Hmm.
The answer should be same.
Yes.
The answer
Yes.
should be same. It should not be like, oh, I've seen him, he was like this, he was like that, etc., etc. It's a continuous journey. It's like just like you build on your life experiences. Similarly, people also perceive you from outside as a professional. And if somebody goes back to a person who I worked with like 25 years back, he
Correct.
should probably say the right things about me. That should be the target.
Okay. So Sanjeev, let's move on to the technical questions. I have some more interesting stuff. If I have time, we'll talk about those things. So the first question is, despite Government of India focus on solar rooftop, it hasn't really taken off. Current installation is 10 to 12% of the target of 40 gigawatt by 2022. Do you think
Yeah,
that we will be able to achieve this?
yeah. That's more like a very power sector,
It's like
solar
a,
sector
yeah,
type of
but it's
thing.
like a crystal ball gazing. So what's your view?
No, it's like no, it's like I think the government has honestly no clue how they're going to do it.
Hmm,
The government has just put some number
right.
up there, and they also are like struggling how it is going to happen. So there are a lot of policy challenges, a lot of regulatory challenges. I can talk for an
No, no,
hour,
I know
but
you can talk for, you
this
can, we
is
can do a
this
full
is
session on this.
I
So
think I don't know who the person who is asked and what is his
yeah,
background,
he's
what is
not
the
given the name.
context. So what is the
Okay, so
context?
we'll
If you
leave it
know
at
the,
that. Let me come to the next question, Sanjeev. How can we reduce our dependence on China for solar photovoltaic cells? Many governments don't honor the PPA. What kind of policy changes do you think are required to instill confidence among IPP players that the investment are protected? So again, I know this is a policy question, but in a
look,
few lines, if you can answer.
let me just answer in one simple question,
Okay.
and make it more generalized. You look at power sector like any other industry. Okay, very simple. So what happens in any industry, if your revenues are less than your cost, then what happens? You are a loss making company. If you are a loss making company, then what happens? Effectively, you're not able to pay to your vendors, or you're not able to meet your operational expenses, or you are not able to grow. This is the situation our distribution companies are in. So the distribution companies that supply power to us, they are all loss making in the country. None of them make profits.
Hmm,
Their yearly losses are in excess of 50,000 crores
hmm,
at least. Right? So that is our customer. When you're talking of this power sector reopening of the PPAs and stuff like that, it's all a it's all a byproduct of the industry, because the industry fundamentally is not strong.
right.
So in this industry, because your ultimate customer is making loss, so therefore you will
Hmm,
find all these types of issues where you will not get paid because your customer is not making money. He will try to reopen a PPA because he is going into losses, so he will try to find out where he can cut down his losses. So expect all these things. So what is the solution? You have to fix it structurally. You have to make the revenue at least equal to your costs. That won't happen because it's a politically sensitive sector.
absolutely.
So I think hopefully that gives a lot of answers people have about the power sector.
Someone who will put his foot down and make things happen will make a difference at some stage. Okay, Ravi Chandran is asking a question. Do you think a hybrid of multiple renewable energy tech in a plant is likely to be more efficient and effective? He's giving an example. It can be
Yeah,
selection
sure.
of
I think
wind, biomass, solar, etc. etc.
See, I think very specific, location is specific. One can obviously create some economies of scale, at least in the evacuation infrastructure or AC side of the business. But obviously, from the technology side, you're dealing with like multiple technologies, so you need to have different machines. You can't have solar blades on the wind turbines. So, so that's not going to happen. So there will be some efficiencies, but I think it's probably trying to find out the last penny.
Hmm.
Useful, but not sure.
Okay, question from Bala Mulli. What suggestion would you give for people who are losing jobs currently due to the pandemic?
I think very relevant question, because
Yes.
I come across people, because companies are downsizing, the jobs are reducing. Uh, uh, I think some industries are going through particularly tough phases. A lot of people who started their startups or were in the entrepreneurship phase have faced problems. So this definitely is a very tough time, because particularly if you don't have the backups, financial backups particularly, I think it's a tough time.
Right.
Having said that, I think probably, at least in this group, I can be reasonably confident that if you go around and ask your network, within your network, that this is my basic qualification or experience or industry experience, and so I think there will be people who will be willing to offer you some work. I can't say it will be probably 100% of what you were doing earlier. So one has to remain ready for a little bit of a drop. It's like everything else. If the economy is dropping, we also have to be ready for a drop. So, for example, in our company, if we didn't increase the salaries as much as we would have increased in a normal year, people have to remain ready for that thing. So, if for unfortunately your existing company has gone into a tough time, then you either either talk to them, find out what will work, or look for an alternate job which may not give you as much as you would have liked or expected. Don't take that against you. It's not
Yeah.
against you. It's just against the environment. It's just because of the environment in which these situations have arose. When the timings improve, if you have been working consistently, everything will improve. So it's basically like just little ups and downs.
And my little tip, Sanjeev, to Bala is that, or Bala and other people in similar shoes, is that salaries will go through a bit of a rationalization over the next 1 year. I think the salaries in the last 6 to 7 years have grown extremely rapidly for whatever reason, and I think some rationalization will happen. Whether you look at it as reduction in salary or reduction in perks, etc., because some businesses will not be able to afford those level of salaries.
So I think people should not worry about the salary part. I
Yeah,
think salary is just a byproduct of the work that you do. So try to find out something which sustains you.
correct.
That is
And you
more
enjoy.
important at this stage.
And you
And
enjoy.
sustains you financially and you enjoy
Yeah,
both. Maybe in a tough time, you may not find both the things together. So you may not enjoy what keeps you financially sustainable, but you have to decide. And the timings won't last forever. So everything will just pass. So
yeah. The
that's the
only
good part of
challenge is some of the youngsters have taken
yes.
on
I'm
big
saying it
EMIs, and therefore
take
financial
a,
stability becomes very
yeah,
important.
take a little pain at this stage, which
Yeah.
is probably unavoidable.
So, Sanjeev, one last question for the benefit of those who were expecting a large technical discussion. Maybe a 1 or 2 minute summary from you in terms of what to expect from the industry in the next. What is your take on the industry? Just a few line summary.
So I think the way this energy industry is moving, one thing is very clear that we are moving away from fossil fuel. The second thing is there that this is a phase, probably over next 5, 10, 15 years, we'll be going through a complete energy transition, which will be largely renewables. We won't be completely away from the fossil fuel, but as storage technologies and some of the hydrogen cells related technologies kick in, there's going to be complete shift in terms of how we have known about this industry so far. What that means is there's also going to be a move away from the large centralized power plants or large centralized grid to more and more of distributed generation, the type of thing that we do in the rooftop space. The second thing that you will see is there's going to be more integration between the mobility and electricity. The electric vehicles will and the electricity industry will start integrating more and more. So you'll find companies which are common in both.
Okay.
So you will find companies which are in the electricity sector and also in the electric mobility, because a lot of the storage that will be required from renewable industry will be going into actually the vehicles rather than creating the large battery spaces by its own. You will have the batteries which are in the vehicles and then you store
Correct.
it.
Correct.
That is something which is also going to transition. Uh, so given these 2 points, the opportunities that will arise for people who are looking in the energy space will also be on the technology side, because the energy will become more and more digital. It won't remain like a hardwire type of thing. So there will be a lot of digital play which will come up in the technology space. So and the technology like the IoTs and the type of things that you're doing in your homes. So these things will go through a transition. It's a interesting transition, I would say, for the entire industry.
Sanjeev, one last question from Atul Bhatnagar. Why is there no policy to support smart microgrids for remote areas to support the electrification drive of the government? And he's suggesting grid operators should be given protection to
Yeah,
develop
Atul.
and operate for
Yeah,
25 years to say
I
the
agree,
least.
Atul. If the government is really serious about it, because nobody is going to invest for like 1 year, 2 years, and then suddenly the electricity reaches that village and the microgrid goes out of fashion. So that's a tough part. So when people ask me that what about, why don't you go into the rural areas, microgrid and all that, I think it's like the government is not providing any protection. Today you may go to a rural microgrid, people will buy from you because they don't have the electricity. Tomorrow the government will bring the wires to their home in 2 years, 3 years, whenever, and then they will say, okay, thank you so much, I'm not paying you because I'm getting now free electricity.
Okay, Sanjeev, thank you so much. Wonderful talking to you.
Yeah,
I personally learned some new insights more than, even though I've interacted with you many times. I'm sure our attendees enjoyed the session as well. Thank you to everyone who joined. Our recording will be there on our YouTube channel. If you search for IIMAGES, you will find our YouTube channel. The recording will be up in the next few hours. Our next session, the 10th session, will be with another CEO, another founder who is now amongst the richest 100 Indians. Sanjeev Bhikchandani, more popularly known for Naukri.com. And if you have any other suggestions, ideas for who we should call, what we should be doing in eRoundtable, feel free to drop me a message. And thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Sanjeev, once again.
thank you.